For 35-year-old Kayla Johnson, this evening was supposed to be just another ordinary night. She had just finished a long day at work and returned home earlier than expected. The house, located in a quiet neighborhood of Jackson, Mississippi, had always been her sanctuary, a place where she could forget the stress of the outside world. But on this day, her usual sense of security vanished in an instant. When Kayla walked into the house, she immediately sensed something was off. The silence was too thick, unnerving. Searching for her husband, 37-year-old Derek, she headed upstairs to the bedroom. What she found shattered her world. She accidentally caught her husband in the arms of her younger sister, 30-year-old Layla. The open door, the discarded clothes on the floor, and their guilty faces told the whole story. For Kayla, the moment felt like being struck by a hammer. Her heart pounded in her throat, and each breath became heavy. Tears welled up instantly. But more than anything, she felt an overwhelming emptiness. Her beloved husband, the man she had been with for over 10 years, was betraying her with someone she considered close, almost like family. Layla was not just her sister, but also her friend. Kayla stood frozen, unsure of what to do. She was rooted to the spot, her mind paralyzed by grief and betrayal. After a sleepless night, Kayla still didn't know what to do. Her thoughts raced between wanting to leave and thinking she needed to fight for her marriage. She tried to figure out when everything had gone wrong. Her marriage to Derek had seemed perfect for years. They had built a life from scratch, shared dreams, and made plans, but now, it all felt like an illusion. Kayla couldn't stop the tears, but in front of Layla and Derek, she remained silent, as if her entire being was numb from the horror of the inevitable storm ahead. She felt utterly betrayed and empty, but before she could act, the front door swung open. On the early morning of July 3rd, something happened that changed everything. Kayla and Layla's father, Jerome, whom everyone had thought was dead, returned home after 15 years. Jerome had disappeared in 2007, faking his death, and no one had seen him since. Kayla couldn't believe her eyes when she saw him standing on the doorstep. Jerome looked older, but he still carried the strength and confidence that had defined him before he vanished. His return was a shock to everyone in the family. He explained his disappearance simply. He had to die to escape retribution from former criminal partners who were demanding money and information. He knew his life would be in constant danger otherwise. For all those years, he had been living under a different identity, his affairs covered by loyal allies. Now that the threat had been eliminated, he felt it was time to return. But his arrival was not only unexpected for Kayla and Layla, but also for Derek, who realized that along with Jerome came his own dark past. Jerome hadn't just returned to reunite with his family. He intended to reclaim control of the family business he had left in the hands of trusted associates. His plans included restoring his status in Jackson's criminal circles, but above all, he wanted to reclaim his place as the head of the family. However, with his return, a new struggle for power and hidden secrets erupted in the household. Jerome immediately sensed the tension between Derek and Layla, though he had no idea they were involved in an affair. The Johnson family was on the brink of greater chaos than Kayla could have ever imagined. Right after Jerome's unexpected return, he began to reconnect with his family and attempt to regain control of his life. But from the very first days, he sensed something was wrong. The family dinner held the day after his return was oddly tense. Kayla tried to act normally, but her nervousness was obvious. Layla and Derek avoided Jerome's gaze, looking strangely distant. Jerome had always trusted his instincts, a trait that had saved him many times in his life of criminal intrigues and dangerous deals. He quickly realized that something was going on between Derek and Layla, something no one was talking about. The tension in the air was unmistakable. However, he still didn't know what his children were hiding from him. Jerome began closely watching Derek and Layla's behavior. Over the next few days, he noticed small details that only fueled his suspicions. Layla and Derek made sure not to be alone together, but their avoidance of each other seemed too rehearsed. Occasionally, they exchanged glances filled with tension and fear. But what they were hiding, Jerome couldn't yet figure out. On the evening of July 6th, Jerome decided to confront Kayla about his suspicions. He asked her directly if she had noticed anything unusual between Layla and Derek. Deep in her emotional turmoil from her recent discovery, Kayla tried to hide her feelings and said maybe she just needed more time to adjust to her father's return. But inside, her anxiety was growing. She knew her father was right, but she couldn't bring herself to tell him that she already knew about her husband and sister's betrayal. Jerome didn't stop at his observations. That day, he decided to make an unexpected visit to the office where Derek worked. To his surprise, he found Layla there, speaking to Derek in an agitated tone. They didn't notice him, but Jerome saw something in their interaction that reminded him of the past. Layla clearly dominated the conversation, while Derek looked cornered. That moment was pivotal for Jerome. He realized that Layla might be using her manipulative tactics again, just as she had 15 years ago. Back then, she had blackmailed him, threatening to expose his connections to Jackson's criminal world. She knew he had many enemies who would gladly take him down if the truth came out. Jerome started recalling events from 15 years ago. In 2007, when he faked his death, it wasn't only because of a criminal debt, but also out of fear of his dark secrets being exposed. Layla, then only 15, had accidentally learned about his dealings through overheard conversations with his partners and gained access to documents she was never supposed to see. She used this information against him. In exchange for her silence, she demanded money and control over certain aspects of the business. Jerome, realizing that his daughter had become too dangerous, decided to flee to protect himself and avoid further blackmail. But Layla hadn't stopped. Over the years, she had honed her skills in manipulating people and situations. Now, on July 8, 2022, Jerome was sure that Layla was still playing her games. But this time, her target wasn't just him. It was Derek, too. She was using her knowledge of her father's criminal secrets to control Derek, preventing him from leaving their relationship. Jerome realized that Layla wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted: complete power over the situation, the business, and anyone standing in her way. Layla and Derek's relationship had reached a point of no return. What had started as passion was evolving into something much more dangerous: a struggle for control. Layla was using her influence not only to manipulate Derek emotionally, but also to dominate him psychologically. Behind the facade of passion lay her true goal: power over the family business and influence over Jerome. She understood that she could use her ties with Derek as a tool to achieve this. Layla and Derek met in secret, far from Kayla's home. That evening, Layla made it clear that their relationship was more than just physical. She openly threatened Derek, reminding him that she knew about his involvement in Jerome's criminal dealings. Layla started talking about the past, about things she had accidentally learned, and how those secrets could be his downfall. She reminded Derek of the days when Jerome, immersed in his criminal operations, had trusted him to manage certain aspects of the business. Layla knew too much. She had gathered information over the years and was now using it as leverage against Derek. He felt trapped and powerless, knowing that if Layla decided to expose his secrets, his life would collapse, his reputation, career, and family would be destroyed. Meanwhile, Kayla increasingly noticed changes in Derek's behavior. He had become more withdrawn, avoided conversations, and was often absent in the evenings. These signs heightened her anxiety, and despite the pain of betrayal, she decided to fight for her marriage. That day, she invited Derek to breakfast at their favorite cafe, hoping that memories of happy times might bring him back to her. During the meeting, she tried to talk about the past, about how they first met, how they built their life together, and how they had dreamed of the future. But Derek was distant. His mind wasn't on Kayla, but consumed by the fear of what Layla could do to his life. Every gesture, every response was filled with tension that Kayla couldn't help but notice. Kayla made another attempt to reconnect with Derek. She planned a romantic dinner at home, hoping to ease the tension and regain the closeness they once had. They spent the evening reminiscing about their trips and cherished moments. But even then, Kayla couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Later, when Derek stepped outside to take a phone call, Kayla had a gut feeling that the conversation wasn't about work. She overheard bits and pieces of the exchange, Layla's voice on the other end. That moment confirmed her suspicions. Despite her determination to save her marriage, she realized the situation was far more complicated than just an affair. Someone was intentionally tearing apart everything they had built over the years. After that dinner, Kayla couldn't sleep. She spent the night replaying recent events in her mind. Her inner voice kept growing louder, telling her that Layla and Derek were connected by something darker than just a physical relationship. She began recalling strange moments from the past. Derek's evasiveness when it came to discussing Jerome's affairs, and how Layla had become increasingly present in their home, even though she had never been interested in the family business. With each passing day, Kayla's suspicions grew stronger, and she began to realize that a hidden battle for the inheritance was unfolding behind the scenes, one that could tear their family apart for good. Gloria Johnson, Kayla and Layla's 59-year-old mother, had always been a distant observer in her family. After her husband Jerome's disappearance 15 years ago, she tried to stay in the background, avoiding confrontations and direct involvement in her daughter's lives. However, after Jerome's return and the rising tension in the family, Gloria could no longer stand by. She felt that her time had come and that this was her last chance to preserve the family's reputation and protect it from complete collapse. On the morning of July 14th, Gloria carefully observed every member of her family. She had long suspected that something was wrong between Layla and Derek, but she didn't know all the details. After Jerome's return and the tense events of the past few days, she decided to take action. Gloria didn't want to intervene directly, fearing her involvement might make things worse. Instead, she chose a path of quiet observation and gathering evidence. Late at night, when the house was already quiet, Gloria began installing hidden cameras around the home. She picked strategic locations: the kitchen, the living room, and the hallways leading to the bedrooms. Her goal was clear. She needed to collect proof that Layla and Derek were playing a dangerous double game. The fear of the potential consequences for both their family's reputation and Jerome's business pushed her to act. The cameras were installed discreetly, and Gloria felt a surge of determination. She also set up her mobile device to monitor Layla and Derek's phone calls, using old contacts she had in the tech field. Gloria knew that gathering information was the only way to keep the family from falling apart and to stop her children from self-destructing. The next day, while reviewing the first footage, Gloria noticed a tense conversation between Layla and Derek in the kitchen. Their words were unclear, but the emotions conveyed through their gestures spoke volumes. Layla clearly held the upper hand, threatening Derek with something he was desperately trying to dismiss. Gloria had seen enough to confirm her suspicions. Their relationship was not just a family conflict. She felt that even more shocking revelations lay ahead. Gloria reached out to an old friend, 38-year-old Malik Hughes. Malik had been close to the family for many years and had once played an important role in Kayla's life. Though they had drifted apart, he had always stayed in touch. Gloria knew that Malik was the person who could be there for Kayla during this difficult time, as her life was falling apart. On the evening of July 17th, Gloria met with Malik and shared her concerns and the unfolding events within the family. She knew that Kayla needed emotional support, someone who could help her get through the crisis. Malik was ready to step in. He was in Jackson for business and decided to visit Kayla. Meanwhile, Gloria continued her covert investigation. Her next goal was to gather evidence that Layla was blackmailing Derek. She understood that her children were trapped in a dangerous game, and if this came to light, it could destroy both the family's reputation and Jerome's business. But Gloria knew she couldn't stop until she had the full picture. Malik's meeting with Kayla became a turning point for her. His presence brought back memories of brighter, simpler days when their friendship was easy and carefree. Kayla found in Malik the support she desperately needed, and slowly, she began to regain the strength she needed to face the crisis. As she continued to review the footage over the next few days, Gloria finally heard what she had been looking for. Layla openly threatened Derek, saying she would reveal his involvement in Jerome's criminal dealings if he tried to end their relationship. This was the proof Gloria needed, evidence that Layla was manipulating Derek for her own gain. Now, armed with solid evidence, Gloria knew it was time to act. She understood that exposing these secrets would cause a scandal, but her instinct to protect her family drove her to act decisively. She couldn't allow Layla to continue her dangerous game, destroying everything they had built over the years. Jerome's return was gradually leading to an open battle for power within the Johnson family. Realizing that his control over the family business was under threat, Jerome decided to act. He didn't just return as a father, but as a businessman who wanted to regain his position. During a family meeting he organized on the morning of July 20th, Jerome announced that he planned to hand over control of the family business to someone in the family, but he hadn't yet decided who. This statement immediately triggered a wave of hidden schemes. Layla and Derek saw it as an opportunity to seize control of Jerome's affairs. They knew they could use Jerome's secrets as leverage. Layla, armed with knowledge of her father's past criminal activities, already controlled Derek, and now she intended to use that knowledge to influence Jerome himself. Derek, constantly under pressure from Layla, realized he had little choice. Layla insisted they needed to act quickly to take control of the family business before Jerome could pass it on to someone else. She made it clear that if Jerome tried to give the business to Kayla or anyone else, she would expose his criminal past to the authorities and the media. Though feeling trapped, Derek agreed to Layla's plan. He understood that if he didn't help her seize power, she would ruin not only his life but the entire family's. Together, they began devising a strategy to force Jerome into handing the business over to them, using the threat of revealing his past as leverage. Meanwhile, Jerome suspected something was happening behind his back. He sensed that Layla and Derek were plotting against him, but couldn't figure out exactly what. To strengthen his position, he began holding meetings with lawyers and financial advisors to prepare for the transfer of the business. Jerome considered setting up a trust or foundation to protect the business from internal threats. But his efforts were soon at risk. Gloria, now with evidence of Layla and Derek's secret actions, understood that the time for decisive action had come. She felt that if she didn't intervene now, the family would crumble under the weight of Layla's schemes. On the morning of July 23rd, Gloria began preparing for the exposure. She decided to publish the compromising material she had gathered from the hidden cameras and phone recordings. The evidence included proof of Layla and Derek's affair, as well as their plans to blackmail Jerome. Gloria made a bold move. She posted the gathered materials on social media, creating an anonymous page where she revealed all the details. She sent the link to this page to journalists and several influential bloggers in Jackson. Soon, the scandal erupted. The story of Layla and Derek plotting against Jerome quickly went viral, causing a massive public outcry. By the morning of July 25th, the Johnson family was at the center of a major scandal. The revelation that Layla and Derek had planned to blackmail Jerome for control of his business shocked the community and destroyed their reputation. The media was buzzing with discussions about how this scandal would impact the family's future, and journalists began digging deeper, trying to uncover more details about Jerome's past and his business. Layla and Derek's plans unraveled in an instant. Jerome, upon learning of the publication, realized it was Gloria's doing and was furious. He felt that his family was now at risk of being torn apart not just from within, but by the public. At an emergency meeting, Jerome announced that the transfer of the business was postponed indefinitely. Layla and Derek were left in shock as their plans were exposed. Gloria, though facing pressure from the family for making the issue public, felt that she had made the right choice. Her actions had prevented the catastrophe that could have destroyed the entire family. By the morning of July 27th, the tension in the Johnson household had reached its peak. After Gloria's exposure, the family's relationships were shattered. Each member avoided the other, everyone lost in their own thoughts and fears. Layla and Derek were trying to deal with the fallout from the scandal, which was now in full public view. Meanwhile, Jerome felt his world collapsing, and the only thing he had left was control over the business. At this point, Jerome decided to organize a family dinner to discuss the future of the family and the business. He knew the situation needed to be addressed. Invitations were sent to everyone, and the meeting was set for that evening. Little did anyone know that this meeting would be the last for one of the family members. The evening arrived, and everyone gathered in the Johnsons' luxurious dining room. The tension was so thick you could almost feel it in the air. Seated around the table were Jerome, Gloria, Layla, Derek, and Kayla. Each participant harbored secret emotions: fear, anger, pain, and betrayal. Jerome began the conversation on a neutral note, suggesting they discuss the future of the family business. He tried to speak calmly, but there was an underlying thread in his tone. He announced that despite recent events, the business would remain under his control until a better solution was found. This statement infuriated Layla. Unable to contain her anger, Layla stood up from the table. She could no longer hold back and decided to go all in. With rage in her voice, she began to threaten Jerome. "You think you control everything? I could ruin your life with a single word," she shouted. Layla started revealing details of Jerome's past crimes, which she had known about since her youth. She threatened that if she didn't get what she wanted, she would hand over all the evidence to the authorities and the media. Gloria and Kayla, sitting at the table, were in shock at what was happening. Derek, realizing things were spiraling out of control, tried to calm Layla down, but she was determined to destroy her father. Layla's words triggered Jerome's fury. He couldn't allow his criminal past, hidden for so many years, to become public knowledge. In a fit of rage, which he could no longer control, Jerome rose from the table. His face contorted with anger, and everyone around understood that something terrible was about to happen. Layla continued shouting, hurling accusations at Jerome. Suddenly, he grabbed a heavy candlestick from the table and struck her on the head with full force. It all happened in an instant. Layla, not even having time to comprehend what was happening, collapsed to the floor. The room was filled with the sound of the blow, followed by complete silence. Gloria, Kayla, and Derek watched in horror at what had just unfolded. Layla lay unconscious on the floor, and blood began to pool slowly around her head. Jerome, overcome with panic and rage, realized he had just killed his own daughter. The room froze in silent horror. Derek, witnessing this terrible act, couldn't believe his eyes. His world was crumbling before him. The sister with whom he shared so many dark secrets was dead. Kayla, paralyzed with fear, couldn't say a word. Gloria, always the one to hold things together, stood with a blank stare, realizing their family was utterly destroyed. Derek, barely regaining his composure, understood that his life was now completely ruined. He had lost everything, his wife, his sister, and any chance of ever controlling the family business. Layla's death was the final blow to his ambitions. He knew there was no way back now. The next day after Layla's horrific murder, Jerome left the Johnson home. He knew that if he stayed, he would have to face justice. His mind raced with thoughts about how quickly everything had gone wrong. Escaping into the dark night, Jerome hoped to flee from his mistakes and the shadows of his past. No one in the family knew where he had gone. Only a few phone calls and suspicious activity on his bank accounts gave weak hints that he might be hiding somewhere in the southern part of the country. Meanwhile, Gloria found herself in a difficult situation. After exposing Layla and Derek, her relationship with Jerome could never be the same. His disappearance only complicated things further. She understood that now the responsibility for preserving what was left of the family's reputation lay on her shoulders. Trying to prevent further leaks and protect the business, Gloria began active negotiations with lawyers and PR agents. She gave interviews to journalists, trying to spin the story in the best light, but the wave of public condemnation was relentless. The Johnson family was now at the center of attention. The press and social media exploded with news about the tragic murder, Jerome's disappearance, and the scandals that had surfaced in the past few days. Gloria gave interviews, attempting to frame the events as a tragic accident and to downplay the details of Jerome's criminal past. However, journalists continued digging into his affairs, and the dark sides of the family were becoming public knowledge. Gloria continued to fight for control over the family business, but her strength was waning. She knew the situation could spiral out of control at any moment, and she could lose not only the business, but everything she had been trying to protect. Kayla, still in shock from the loss of her sister and the destruction of her family, found solace only in Malik. He had stayed by her side since the murder, helping her cope with the pain and trauma. Despite her broken relationship with Derek and the unresolvable family problems, Kayla began to find the strength to move forward. Malik was not only an emotional support, but also someone who gave her new hope. Their once-lost friendship began to regain its former strength, blossoming into something more. Each day spent with him helped her reclaim herself and her belief in the future. Kayla made an important decision. She could no longer live in the shadow of her shattered family. She began planning a new life, far away from the scandals and tragedies, determined to leave it all behind. On the evening of August 5th, she met Malik at the cafe where they had spent time together many years ago and shared her plans with him. Malik supported her decision, saying he was ready to be by her side wherever she went. Kayla left Jackson, leaving behind the house where so much pain had occurred. Her heart had yet to heal from all the wounds, but she knew that something new awaited her. With Malik, they began discussing the possibility of moving to another city where they could start fresh. Now, with a new source of strength in her old friend, her life had found meaning and direction once again. Malik continued to support her, helping her find herself in a new world, free from the shadows of the past.